what complementary legislation is either pending or needed here in Illinois?
I think what we're hearing from our members here today at the Illinois Corn Annual Meeting is about driving demand in our industry. You know, crops prices are down, and so as an association, our members in our surveys and everyone talks about how do we build demand in our industry. And one of the biggest demands in the corn world is obviously ethanol. And so, corn-based ethanol, we produce a lot of it here in Illinois. About a third of our grain goes into ethanol here in Illinois. And so, you mentioned federal policy. There's a lot of that. I'm focused on state policy here, and so one of the big issues that's on the table that people are looking at around here is something called a clean transportation standard. Senator Dave Kaler from the Peoria area is the sponsor of some legislation, and over the past year, he's had several, I'd say a lot actually, more than several, stakeholder meetings with people interested in this topic, but the goal of the legislation is to reduce carbon emissions from our transportation sector by 25% in over 10 years. So how do we do that? And so Illinois Corn and Farm Bureau have been engaged in this topic to proactively make sure that biofuels and inherently the agriculture industry is a part of making that policy, because we want to make sure that it helps farmers and doesn't hurt them.
Now, can E15 go a long way toward that?
Absolutely. When we think about clean fuel transportation standards, a lot of people's mind goes to the West Coast states, the Californias, the Oregons, the Washingtons of the world. And in those policies, they haven't focused so much on biofuels and agriculture. Some people would say that those markets even hinder our domestic biofuels and agriculture in those places, and try to promote other sorts of technologies, maybe electric cars or other things like that. And so what we're going for here, because of our state and being such a renewable fuel producing state and a strong agricultural economy state, we're trying to shape policy and think about how can we create policy here for our agriculture community to benefit from a policy like that.
So how do we go about this? What change would need to happen?
Well, it's all obviously being under development now, right? And so
the legislation.
So there has been a bill dropped. This is legislation that has been worked on for a couple years, and I'm not sure about how it moves forward, but we think about when it does. We want to make sure that that renewable fuel can play a large part of carbon emissions that are being talked about. So if we're trying to reduce our carbon emissions from the transportation sector, we want to make sure that biofuels and inherently agriculture can play a big role in doing that.
Now, I'm assuming this is not just ethanol, but it's biodiesel as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, but as far as Illinois Corn, you're focused on the ethanol component of it, and is there a goal of percentage inclusion in the motor fuel that you would like to see?
There's a couple big goals that we have with the bill, a couple main premises, and so when we think about reducing the carbon emissions, we want to look at all the fuels in a technology neutral way. And so we want to make sure for things like life cycle analysis, when we think about the carbon emissions coming off the fuel, including electricity, how do we fairly account for that? And so we want to use something called the Argonne-Greet model to do that. We think that's the fairest way to do it. So that's a basic tenet that we in agriculture are promoting in a policy like this. Secondly, we want to make sure that farming practices are included. And so when a farmer farms his corn in a certain way, conservation, we want it to reward conservation practices. And so therefore, when corn is being farmed in a way around conservation, the farmer can benefit because he's delivering a cleaner product to the ethanol plant, and then inherently that product is made into a cleaner emission reduction fuel.
So you're trying to reduce the carbon intensity of that agronomic practice to give a higher credit for that ethanol.
Absolutely. That's the goal here. We're a leader in that here in Illinois, and so if we can shape the policy to be that, it would be kind of the first in the nation to be able to account for that in Illinois, and so that's the goal. So we're looking at kind of a fair assessment, life cycle analysis. We want farmer practices to be included in our biofuel calculation for emissions, as well as I think another big goal is for an Illinois tax incentive or an Illinois incentive like this that really impacts our biofuel industry. We want to make sure to focus on domestically produced product as well. And so in this, we want to make sure that our ethanol that we're making here in our state is the primary focus and not products from Brazil or palm oil from China.
So in that tax incentive, how does that work? Do farmers end up being benefited by this?
It's not so much a tax incentive, but what the bill is about is reducing carbon emissions just overall.
Okay.
And so you can do that by blending renewable fuel into your gasoline. And so we want to focus on domestically produced ethanol when it comes to that, as well as accounting for it correctly and making sure that we can be a part of that market.
It would seem like the 610 farmers who are part of Precision Conservation Management, they would be the prime ones to deliver that 660,000 acres of corn that they've got into this system. That they would benefit first.
Practices, there's multiple types of practices. There's cover cropping, there's strip till, nitrogen management. All these sorts of practices reduces the carbon intensity of the corn that comes off the field, and then inherently when you make that into a biofuel, it becomes a much more carbon neutral product.
Okay. Corn growers have a program for doing this and achieving it here this year?
At our board meeting, we talk about it quite a bit, but conservation is always a focus here for Illinois corn growers, and so it's a mission along with driving demand for our products.
What have I not asked about that's important to this conversation?
I think with the clean transportation standard, if we can get it right for agriculture, we want to create a model for other states to look at. When I mentioned earlier about people's minds going to the West Coast, California, the Washington, the Oregon type of clean fuel standard, we want to create something different here that focuses on renewable fuels that are made here locally instead of programs that we've seen in other places. And so I think that's the ultimate goal, and we hope to accomplish that